So this is what your SQL queries previously looked like when we were working with Flask, right? You had to write your query here, select star from users where ID equals :ID, right? And then you had to set that to a query. You pass in the value for that ID, and then you actually run the query here, right? Okay. So once you have your ORM set up in Django, right? And so we still have to do that first, but once it's set up, you can say that a specific user is just users, right? Actually, this is probably user class, okay? Dot objects, and you just pass that the primary key is the ID. Okay, so that will grab that user object for you, right? So this is a little bit simpler than having to write these other lines. You don't have to write the query as well. It becomes easier also to grab the attributes once you have that specific object. It's like if I wanted some of the other pieces of data, I might write another query for this. Whereas after I have this, I can just write user dot something, right? And I can just grab that piece of other piece of data. Okay. So and here's a second example for you guys. Okay. So this is a long example where I needed to do a long example where I had like a join statement. Okay. Let's say I had the users, and users had all these different comments. Okay. So I can write this long select statement to get all the comments for that specific user, given a specific name of that user, or I can just grab that user object first, and filter is a way where you can grab the user based on a specific attribute. This is going to return an array for me, and because it's an array, I just want the first element to get that actually specific user object. So I pass in an array of 0 to get that first indexed object, and then I can get all their comments by calling .comments and then grabbing all of them with .all. Okay, so it just basically makes it easier to grab this data. Any questions on this so far? All right, so okay, this is what building that ORM layer looks like. Okay, so you define it's going to be in your models.py file, which is already provided for you when you create a Django application. And in that file, you're going to define a class, okay, and then you fill in your attributes here. And then max length, this is a validation. Okay, so I'm saying that this field cannot be longer than this specific length. Note that these validations will not work with SQLite. You guys are going to be using SQLite for Django, and then you guys will, when you guys deploy, you'll be using, I think, MySQL. So even though you put these validations in here for SQLite, they won't take effect. Okay, so it won't actually limit the character length until you switch over to like a production database like MySQL. Okay, yeah, so that's what the models look like. After you have built this model class, okay, so because we're working with SQLite and because we're working with Django, previously when we worked with Flask, right, you would actually make your database separately, right? You would draw out your ERD and you like forward engineer it, and that would create the database tables, right? With Django, you're actually going to create the tables through Django. Okay, so Django will take care of making those tables in SQL for you. All you have to do is set up the model layer, right? Set up the ORM, and then you tell it to make the tables. Okay, so after you filled in this description in models.py, right, you're specifying what you want the table to look like. This is kind of like the equivalent of having that ERD. Okay, and then to forward engineer it, you need to actually tell Django to go and make those database tables for you. Okay, so to make those database tables, you're going to need to basically do what's called migrating. Okay, so I have this here, and I'll go to, I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. I slacked out this cheat sheet for you guys for Django last night, and basically it covers a lot of the different syntax for how to do things in Django, including how to do some of the model stuff. Okay, so I have model stuff at the top. Okay, so creating the model layer. Okay, so here's that model layer class, and then after you have that set up, you need to run the migrations. Okay, so what this does is when you run Python manage.py make migrations, you will be making the migration files. Okay, so that's basically making the code and the script and the commands to make the database for SQL. So after you've made the code for it, you then need to run the code. Okay, so Python manage.py make migrations makes the migration files, and then you need to actually migrate it afterwards to run that code to create the database. Okay. After you've created the database, then you will be able to, your Django app will be able to start writing to the database. Okay. Whenever you make changes to models.py, let's say you add like a new column, you need to rerun make migrations so that it makes the updated changes of the script it needs to run to make those changes to the database. Okay, so you will need to rerun this command anytime you update models.py, and then also remigrate again. Okay, and so that's how we translate from the ORM layer to the SQL layer. So you don't actually have to touch the SQL layer yourself, as long as you just manipulate it through this ORM layer. All right, so the other thing is that since we are using SQLite, previously if you wanted to add seed data to your SQL database, you could just go into MySQL Workbench, write your SQL statements, and that would create your data. Or you could like open up a table and just like type your data inside, right? Since we are working with Django now, you're not going to be able to do that because you're using SQLite, and your SQLite file looks like this. Okay, so you're not going to be able to change it at all, right? So the way that you're going to change it is you could build out your application and run your SQL queries directly in your application, right, to like insert data. But to do that, you would have to have your route set up. You'd have to like hit specific method paths. And so it's a little bit more complicated to do that way. The way I recommend you do it is to actually use what's called the Python shell. Okay, so I'm going to show you the Python shell for Django. So here, I'm in my courses assignment. Okay. Okay, and note, you will still need to have created your models first, right, for this to work. This is after you've created all the classes in your models.py file. This is a way of basically creating the seed data after you've run all the migrations, as well as to check that you've like built the models.py file correctly, that you have all the attributes in place and stuff. Okay, so if you run Python, and you want to also load your Django environment before you do this as well. Python./manage.py shell. Okay. Okay, so this basically is kind of like opening up that terminal server thing, right? That you could print to, right? So you could like 5, whatever, right? It's just opening a Python shell so you can interact with Python. Okay, but because you're doing it specifically in your Django assignment, you have reference to some of your Django project stuff, such as the class. Now, even though that stuff is available, you still have to import the class model. So you have to do like from apps dot the name of your project. So mine is courses dot models import course. Okay, so courses is the name of my project. Course is the name of my class. Okay, capital letter course is the name of my class, and courses dot models is the name of my project. Okay, so now I've imported that object. So if I want to run a ORM query, I can do something like course.objects.log. Okay, and that'll return my array of course objects. Okay, if I wanted to run another query for creating a course through here, I could do that as well. If I wanted to grab a specific course, I could also do that. If you'll notice, this is a query set, right? So this is like an array, right? You see these square brackets, you know it's an array. Within each of the array, each of the elements is a specific course object. Okay. Now, even though this is a course object, I can't see that much data about it. So if I want to know more specifics about it, I actually need to modify my models class a little bit. So if I go to here, I have this code that's commented out. If I uncomment this, okay, so this basically makes a custom return method of what that object is. Okay, so it'll change how it's displayed in the terminal, and it allows us to just like visualize it better. Okay, so I specify what I want to display. So I'm saying I want to display the ID, a string called ID colon, and I want to display the ID of my object, and then I'm going to display the name of my object. So if I were to exit this, because it needs to reload, I start this again. Okay. Migrating. What do you mean remigrate? Okay, I guess I need to remigrate for this. So Python .py make migrations. Oh, that's not the problem. This is the problem. Okay. Let's try again. Okay. So I'm going to import again. Course.objects. And so now the ID outputs, right, as well as an int. So it'll make it easier for you to examine what objects you have in your database. Okay. So in general, you guys have learned how to build like your views.py, your roles.py, and your templates, right, for Django. My recommendation when you build a full-on project is that you actually build the model layer first. Okay. If you build it, because once you have the model layer built out, if you have all the data you need, you actually won't need to go back to the model layer so much, right? Your views and your like routes and your stuff like that, right? And your templates, they're going to need to use data from that model layer. But if you build out your model layer first, then that piece is like done, and you can move on to building your views.py and your templates and stuff like that. Okay, any questions on this so far? All right, so just to tie this back to OOP a little bit more, right? We have a class here, class course, right? And then we have all of these course objects, right? So each one is an instance of that class, and you're using the class to fetch it, as well as using the class to create the objects. Okay, so this is how sort of OOP ties in with Django a little. Okay, because they're objects, each of them have their attributes. You can grab specific attributes from them as well. All right, the last thing I want to show you guys is debugging. So this is not related to Django specifically, but this is just a useful debugging tool in general. I have set up this thing called IPython. Okay, so right now, if you guys are debugging, you often want to print out the objects you want to examine to see, what that stuff is, to see if you're hitting a specific path that you want to examine. Here, this is an alternative way to do that. I actually prefer using this way because it's using breakpoints and you have more control over it. But it does take a little bit more setup. Okay, so I have to import this library. So from IPython, import embed, and then afterwards, this line embed, open parentheses, close parentheses. This is basically setting a breakpoint. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how this works. So if I were to launch this server, which I've already launched, okay, and so this is my courses project, okay. If I hit this submit button, okay, I'm going to say in here, in here. I hit submit, okay. You'll see that there's this like loading circle thing, right? This means that normally this means the browser is still loading the page. The browser is stuck loading the page because it has hit this breakpoint. Okay, so it's like it made that request, it saw that embed command, and then it basically stopped there. Okay, if I go to my terminal, I'll see this. See what it looks like this. So let's see, it's bigger. Okay, so I'm basically inside the terminal right now. So if you remember my embed statement, I put it here. Okay, so I'm inside this method that I hit. Okay, so I can actually I can actually do whatever I want inside Python inside this terminal, right? If I want to, do 5 + 5, I can do that. If I want to view something or run like a SQL command or orm command, I can also do that. If this also confirms for me that I was able to successfully hit that method, right? That I hit that route rather than like another route. If I hit exit, I'll come out of that and I'll continue to, the web application will just continue. Okay, so if it's a redirect, it'll hit another path. Otherwise, I just, finished running this line of code. Okay, now if you'll notice, usually when I put this command in here, okay, I'm actually supposed to update this list of courses. So I should have one more course, okay, when I type in this command. but that's not happening. Okay, so if I want to use this as a debug tool, I can examine what's happening inside that line of code in real time to see why that's not happening. Okay, so I hit the submit button again, I hit my embed again, and then I'm supposed to hit this method, and I'm supposed to create a course. Okay, so I can check if I'm hitting this method or not by potentially putting another embed statement here, like here, if I wanted to. Okay, or I can just check whether this statement is true. So if I copy this, I put it in here, it says it's false. Okay, so it tells me that my request method is not a post. It's not this post, right? So something's wrong with it, and if I want to debug it, I can examine what this request.method is. Okay, so if I look at that, I'll see that this is like a capital post, right? And so if I were to do, if I were to change this equation right to this, it will return true. Okay, so this is a way to basically just like examine those smaller pieces as you're going along, so you can debug it a little bit better. Okay, similarly, you could do this with just like print statements by printing out each of these sections, but doing it this way allows you to check it in real time a little faster. Okay, so if I do that, I make this fix. Try this again. It stops at the embed. I can exit through it. I have 2 embed statements now, so I exit both of them, and now I'm able to have this. Okay.